Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi alladhi wakafa wa salatu wa salamu ala man la nabiyya ba'da amma ba'd. Respected listeners, welcome to the session 8 of the reading of Irshad al-Muluk. In the last session we covered the beginning of the second section of Irshad al-Muluk, and this was regarding the need for a sheikh, the need for the salik to have a sheikh, and the conditions of a sheikh. And there's some preliminary conversation that took place around that, specifically around the need for a sheikh and some of the dala'il and the proofs for that. The next subheading is Sheikh Kamil ki Talash. So before actually discussing the conditions of the sheikh, there's a few subheadings before that. So we're just going to plow through that inshallah ta'ala, and then maybe in a couple of sessions ahead we'll get to the actual conditions of the sheikh. So continuing on with that, Sheikh Kamil ki Talash, the seeking of a perfect Kamil Sheikh. Albatta murid hone wale par lazim hai. It's necessary upon the murid कि Sheikh Kamil ki talash में पूरी कोशिश करे, that he tries his utmost in finding a complete perfect sheikh और खूब जांचे, and to test the waters and to assess the situation very well कि ये sheikh बनाने के लायक है या नहीं, to test and check and to ascertain whether the sheikh that he is proposing to make his sheikh is actually worthy of being a sheikh. क्योंकि बुतेरे तालिब इस रास्ते में बददीनों का इत्तिबा करके हलाक हो चुके हैं. The reason behind this is there's lots of seekers, lots of Sufis, lots of people who are traversing the path, who in this path themselves they began following people who are irreligious, and this was a means of them destroying themselves spiritually. बल्कि सच पूछूं तो इस रास्ते में अक्सर बर्बादी सिर्फ इसी की बदौलत आती है. And then he says that if truth be told, in this path the majority of destruction is only on account of this, that the person didn't seek and look for a sheikh who was perfect, who was a perfect sheikh in every sense of the matter. हक ताला ने फरमाया है, Allah Almighty says in the Quran Kareem, कि जब जन्नती जन्नत में, that when the people of Jannah will enter paradise and the people of Jahannam shall enter Jahannam, so shaitan pukarega, and then shaitan will say, إن الله وعدكم وعد الحق ووعدتكم فأخلفتكم فلا تلوموني ولوموا أنفسكم. That, O people, Allah Almighty made a promise to you, in that do some pious deeds, then you'll find Jannat. And if you don't obey the prophets, then you shall enter the fire. और एक झूठा वादा तुमसे मैंने भी किया था, and I also promised you, यानी शैतान will say that I also promised you a false promise, कि क़ैद शरीयत से आज़ाद बनोगे, that you shall be free from the restrictions of Shariat itself. तो मज़ा में रहोगे, that on account of this you'll be in pleasure and you'll have a good time. और हश्र हिसाब और किताब के किस्सों में पढ़ोगे तो मुफलिस व नादार और जलील व खार बनेंगे. And if you were to fall into the situation of the stories relating to Hashr wa Hisab, Hashr yani the resurrection, Hisab the reckoning on the day of judgment, and what's mentioned inside the book, then you'll become poor, you'll become wretched, you'll become disgraced. तो मैंने अपने वादा के दुरुस्त होने पर तुम्हारे सामने कोई सच्ची दलील पेश नहीं की थी. I never presented an authentic proof to you to say that my promise is absolutely true. और बजुज़ बुलाने के अपने इत्तिबा पर तुमको मजबूर नहीं किया था. और aside from just calling you, I didn't force you to follow me. This is what Shaitan is going to be saying. So तुमने मेरी झूठी पुकार को कबूल किया. You accepted my false promise and my false call. और बिरिज़ा व रग़बत मेरे पीछे लग गए. And with your own volition, with your own happiness, व रग़बत and eagerness, you began following me. जिसका नतीजा आज भुगत रहे हो, on account of which now you're suffering today. बस मुझे क्यों मलामत करते हो? So hence, why is it that you that you rebuke me? अपने आप को मलामत कर, rebuke yourself, कि वादा बरहक से तुम ही ने मुंह फेरा था, that you are the one who turned your face away from the promise, the true promise promised by Allah Almighty. So what the Sheikh is saying here is that it's necessary upon the Sufi himself to find a Sheikh, an authentic Sheikh, a Sheikh who has the conditions of being a Sheikh. And he says that there's many people, they actually become destroyed spiritually because they didn't spend enough time, or they didn't go through the correct process of identifying a sheikh who could be considered to be a sheikh. And there's only one person to blame, and that's themselves. And at the end of the day, he says that Allah Almighty says that on the day of judgment, he mentions the verse of the Quran Kareem, Inna Allah wa'adakum wa'ad al-haqqi, that shaitan, in the Quran, Allah says that shaitan shall say to the people that followed him that indeed Allah promised you a true promise, and I promised you also, which wasn't a true promise, and then you followed, then I betrayed your promise. فَلَا تَلُومُونِي, so don't rebuke me, don't tell me off about it. وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, tell yourself about it. That Allah Almighty promised that you follow His ahkam, you follow His prophets, you'll go into Jannah. If you don't follow His ahkam, you don't follow His prophets, you'll enter Jahannam. Shaitan came along and he said, why do you want to go down that path? Follow my path, it's easier. You're free from restrictions, and you followed me. And Shaitan will say that I never really gave you a true promise. I never really provided any correct, authentic dalil or proof to support my argument, but you still followed me. Now, on this day, on the day of judgment, when you're entering Jahannam, don't blame me, blame yourself, because you make the decision. The Shaykh continues, he says, उससे मालूम हुआ कि बुटेरों ने रायाबी में धोखा खाया और काबिल इत्तिबा शेख की तलाश में कोताही की. He says it can be understood from this that in finding the path, many of the people, they were misled or deceived, and they were deficient in finding a sheikh who could be followed. बदौलत इंसान सूरत शैतान के पीछे लग गए. They followed a human being who looked like a human being, but he was actually a Satan himself in flesh. जिसकी नदामत क़यामत के दिन उठानी पड़ी, an account of which remorse shall be felt on the day of judgment. और इस वक्त नदामत से बजुस परेशानी अफसोस के कुछ नफ़ा नहीं. And on that day there'll be nothing that a person will be able to benefit from, apart from, by having remorse on that day isn't going to benefit you. You're just going to be troubled, and you're going to have lots of regret. और जनाब रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम फरमाते हैं, and then he mentions and he quotes the hadith of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam कि किसी का ज़ाहिरी इस्लाम तुमको मसरूर न बनाए, that let not the external appearance of a person, that they look Islamic, don't let that make you pleased to an extent that you stop following him. जब तक उसकी कल्बी हालत और अकीदा से पूरी वाकिफियत हासिल न कर लो, until you do not acquire complete understanding and awareness of the situation of the person's heart, and is also his beliefs. Are they in conformity with Shariat, or do they not conform to Shariat? इससे मालूम हुआ कि हक्कानियत का मदार इस्लाह अकायद पर है. And from this it can be understood, he says, the author says, that हक्कानियत का मदार, that the central point upon which truth revolves around, इस्लाह अकायद पर है, is on the correct अकीदा of a person. और खुदा ताला के नज़दीक कल्ब का भली बुरी हालत का एतबार है. And according to Allah, a person can be considered to be correct, authentic, and an authentic sheikh himself, or a person, by having a situation of his heart, but through the situation of the heart, whether he's correct or incorrect. तो जिसका दिल गंदा हो, उसकी इबादत मुजाहिदा की ज़ाहिर हालत कैसी ही उम्दा क्यों ना हो, खुदा ताला को पसंदीदा नहीं, और न उसके इत्तिबा से रायाबी की उम्मीद रखनी चाहिए. And he says that regardless of what the external appearance of a person may be, that he looks like a person that does great ibadat, he looks like a person who strives and struggles in the way of Allah Almighty, but because his aqidah is not correct, his heart's not in the right place, then Khuda Ta'ala ko pasandida nahi, then Allah Almighty is not going to like him and like his actions. And uske ittiba se rayabi ki ummeed rakhni chahiye, and one should not have hope that one shall reach the destination of Allah Almighty, yani removing the negative traits and acquiring the positive traits. One's not going to achieve that by following this person. Bas achhi tarah sun lo. So hence, listen very carefully कि तमाम अम्बिया अलैहिस्सलाम की अमूमन और सैयद मुरसलीन सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की इताअत खुसूसन फ़र्ज है, that obeying all of the prophets in general and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam specifically is obligatory फ़र्ज. और जुमला अम्बिया अलैहिस्सलाम उसूल दीन यानी मारिफत ज़ात और सिफ़ात बाय ताला और रसूल और मलाइका और उमूर आखिर वगैरह बिल्कुल मुत्तफ़िक है. And he says that all of the prophets on the fundamentals of the religion, i.e. understanding the Zat of Allah Almighty, understanding the sifat of the qualities of Allah Almighty, understanding the qualities of the prophets, and then what's considered to be the nature of the prophets, that they are infallible, or malaika and the angels themselves, that wa umur akhirat, and the issues relating to the hereafter, that there's a life in the grave, there's a resurrection, the pul sirat, the reckoning, the arsh, jannah, jahannam, etc. That all of the prophets are bilkul muttafiq hai. Muttafiq hai yani they are all agreed on all of these matters. Zara barabar उन बातों में किसी का इख्तिलाफ नहीं. There is not even an iota of difference amongst the prophets themselves. और नस्ख सिर्फ अहकाम और अमाल के मुतालिक हुआ है. And the abrogation, so for example some of the prophets came earlier times, certain things were obligatory in a previous ummah according to shariat of a previous prophet. A prophet came afterwards and that ahkam became mansukh, abrogated. So he says that the naskh, the abrogation that you find, sirf ahkam or amal ke mutalik hua hai, only relates to ahkam, rulings, and amal and the actions of the limbs. Ke Shariat Muhammadiyya ne guzishta, not according to Aqidah. And he explains and he says that, for example, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's Shariat, the Shariat of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ने गुज़िश्ता अंबिया की शरीयतों के अहकाम मंसूख कर दिए, abrogated the rulings of the Shariat introduced and brought by prophets before them. And he gives an example of this. He says, Masalan, पहली शरीयत में 50 नमाज़ें फ़र्ज़ थी. He says that in the Shariat of bygone times, there were 50 namaz, 50 salah, 50 prayers during the day that were obligatory on an individual. और शरीयत मुहम्मदिया में सिर्फ 5 फ़र्ज़ है. And within the Shariat of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's only 5. So what he's saying is that when it comes to the a'mal and the actions of the limbs, there can be some differences within the different Shariats of the different prophets. But when it comes to the usul or the aqidah itself, everything is agreed. Aqaid mein naskh nahi hua. He says that there's never been an abrogation in aqidah, in belief. Kyunki aqaid sab ke ek hai. Why? Because aqidah of each of all the prophets is just one. और उम्मत मुहम्मदिया के अइम्मा मुज्तहिदीन का बाहम इख्तिलाफ भी फुरूई जुज़ियात में है. And he says that the imams, the mujtahid imams, the 4 imams and others within the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, their differences on masla masail is only with the peripherals, the furu'at, the juz'iyat, not the usul. Usul में नहीं है, क्योंकि चारों हजरात में अकायद के अलावा आमाल शरिया के उसूल भी मुत्तहिद है. Why? Because all of the 4 imams, अकायद के अलावा, aside from Aqidah, in the A'mal of Sharia, their principles are also very similar, or all united in the principles. Ke 5 namaze sabke nazdeek faraz hai, in that there are 5 salah that is obligatory on every single individual. अगर इख्तिलाफ है तो जुज़ फ़रा में कि किसी के नज़दीक तकबीर में रफ़ायदान सुन्नत है. And if there's any differences, then it's in the furu'at, in the peripherals. For example, whether to raise the hands when doing the takbir, Allahu Akbar, is that sunnat, or is it sunnat to raise the hands, or is it mustahab to not raise the hands? और किसी के नज़दीक नहीं, और जिसने उसूल में गलती की वो मुब्तदी और गुमराह हो गया. And he then says that whoever has placed the wrong step on the usul of religion, yani aqidah, and the usul and the principles of religion, the fundamentals of religion, for example, salah. Salah is something that's agreed by all the ulama, and it's something agreed by all the 4 imams. But if someone turns around and says, right, well, salah is no longer obligatory, then वो मुब्तदी, then this person is an innovator और गुमराह हो गया, and he's gone astray. और इस गुमराही से नजात मिलना किताब और सुन्नह इजमा उम्मत का इत्तिबा की बगैर मुमकिन है. And he says to find salvation from this deviancy, it's impossible without following the book, the Quran, the Sunnah, and the consensus of the ummah. Or fara mein ikhtilaf hona, and when it comes to the peripherals, if there's a difference of opinions, to mujib rahmat ummat par wusat hai, then this is considered to be a means of acquiring the rahmat of Allah Almighty, and a means by making the situation very elaborate and liberal for the ummah. कि जिस पर अमल कर लिया इंद अल्लाह सही, that whichever one acts upon, this is considered to be correct और मोतबर हो गया. चुनांचे मुज्तहिदीन के लिए बिलिसान पैगंबर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम से इज्तिहादी गलती पर भी एक सवाब का वादा है. And because of this, the mujtahids, the people who, the ulama who have the quality of ijtihad inside them, if they were to make a mistake, Prophet ﷺ said, if they were to make a mistake in the ijtihad, then they were to receive one अजर. और अगर इज्तिहाद से वो हुक्म निकल आया जो इंदल्लाह सवाब व हक है, तब तो दोहरा अजर मिलेगा. And if they were to, if through the ijtihad they were to reach the correct conclusion, they would get two rewards. One for doing the ijtihad, and number two for reaching a correct conclusion. बस जिस शेख का ये मज़हब हो और इजमा उम्मत और किताब सुन्नत के मुवाफिक अकायद रखता हो और बाई हुमा तरीक़त व हकीक़त इल्म का भी माहिर हो, वो बेशक शेख बनाने के काबिल है. Then he says, hence, so all throughout up till now, what the sheikh's been emphasizing is that one of the conditions of a sheikh is that he has to be a follower of Quran and Hadith and the Ijma. He has to be someone who, when it comes to the Aqidah, is absolutely spot on. There is no difference of opinion in the Aqidah. When it comes to the usuls of religion, they have to be, they have to follow the usuls and the principles of religion correctly, the fundamentals. But when it comes to furu'at, there can be wusat inside there. And he's saying that this is absolutely important. And a person who, when he finds a sheikh, he needs to make sure that the sheikh is of that caliber. Then he continues on and he says, he goes into saying that the sheikh whose mazhab is this, that when it comes to the usul, the aqidah and the fundamental religion, everyone is agreed and you have to follow this. And his aqidah is in conformance with the kitab and the sunnah and the ijma of the ummah. And at the same time, he also has knowledge of tariqat, tasawwuf itself, and the connecting to Allah Almighty and returning to Allah Almighty. And in fact, not just he not only has knowledge of this, but he's actually an expert on this. वो बेशक शेख बनाने के काबिल है. He is someone who's worthy of being a sheikh. और मुब्तदी तालिब को उसकी हक्कानी महारत का हाल, उसके मुरीदों के हालात और हम असद सिका दीनदार लोगों के ज़ुबानों से दरियाफ़्त करना चाहिए. And he says that the person who's traversing the path, who wants to the initiator, the person who's starting off in the path, then in order to find out whether this person is a person of truth, whether he is an expert in this, then and uske murido ke halat, then he should look at the situation of his murids. What is the condition of the murids? Are they according to sunnah or according to sunnah or not? Or do they follow a life that's according to shariat or not, etc. And what is their connection to Allah Almighty? And also, hum asad thiqa dindar logo ki zuban se dariyaf karna chahiye. He should also ask the contemporary, reliable, authentic religious people of that time कि उसके मुरीदों के दीन की पुख्तगी और इत्तिबा शरीयत में क्या हालत है. And by doing this, he'll be able to understand what is the spiritual condition, what is the firmness on religion, what is the following of Shariat found within the murids of this individual. Or Sulai Zamane uske mutalik kya kehte, and find out what the pious people of the era actually say about this individual. To agar ulama waqt us par mu'tariz na ho, if the people of that era do not have any objections against this person, balki baaz ahle ilm aur samajdar sulaha aur bure jo जवान अहले दानिश उससे फेज़, जो इन अहले दानिश से फेज़ भी हासिल करते हो, दीनी मोहब्बत रखते हो और तरीक़ और हकीम मुस्तनद तस्लीम करते हो, तो समझ लेना चाहिए कि दर हकीम वो राय हक का माहिर है. So, if the ulama of that era have no objections against this individual, but rather some of the people of knowledge and some of those who have understanding from the pious, and some of the individuals of people with intelligence also acquire faith, spiritual effulgence from this individual, and they also maintain a relationship, a religious relationship with this individual of love and respect, और तरीक़ हकीकत में मुझसे तस्लीम, and they accept this individual to be authentic when it comes to tasawwuf, तो समझ लेना चाहिए, then they should understand कि दर हकीकत that in reality this individual is a person who's an expert on the path of Allah Almighty. बस इसका दामन पकड़ लेना चाहिए. So they should take hold of this person very firmly. Daman means take hold of his sleeve and hold him firm. और जब उससे बैत कर ले, and when one gives बैत to him, तो दिल से उसका फरमाबरदार बन जाए, then one should accept him, not just by giving his hands and doing the bay'at itself, but also accept this individual from the heart itself and become obedient to him. और तौहीद मतलब के साथ उसकी इताअत का हल्का कान में पहन लेना चाहिए, and also follow him with the concept of Tawheed al-Matlab. And Tawheed al-Matlab is a concept that the Sufis discuss. Inshallah, we'll discuss that next week, because the next section is titled Tawheed al-Matlab and it runs for one page. Inshallah, I'll discuss that next week. We have gone to 20 minutes now, so I'll call this and I'll bring this to an end, inshallah. So in reality, I mean, what we've discussed today is the need to find a Shaykh Kamil. That person should really try hard to find a Shaykh that one can follow. And then he also mentions here the verse of the Quran that on the day of judgment the shaitan will say to the people that followed him that I promised you something, Allah Almighty promised you a true promise, I promised you something else, you disobeyed Allah Almighty, you followed me, but you know, I just told you to follow me, you followed me, now you can rebuke yourself and you can have remorse of yourself, but don't blame me. And from this, the Sheikh then continues to mention, and he says that, you know, at the end of the day, you understand that from this, that there'll be lots of people out there who are in the garb of the Sufis, who are in the garb of the Sheikhs, but you know, are they really worthy of following? Well, you need to check the situation correctly, find out whether his Aqidah is correct, you need to find out whether his beliefs are correct, you need to find out whether he follows the Shariat, and you should also find out whether he follows the Sunnah, and then according to that, using that as a yardstick, you should then follow this person. Otherwise, there's lots of people out there who claim and purport to show the path, but they're actually not showing the path, and then they could destroy an individual spiritually just on account of this. Then he mentions and goes on to the issue of what the that when it comes to the Aqidah and the usul of religion, the fundamentals, 5 Salah, Zakat, Hajj, and also the beliefs, the main beliefs, the major beliefs, then all of the Anbiya, all of the Anbiya, when it comes to Aqidah, were agreed. When it comes to the Furu'at, then there's a disagreement, and that disagreement is tolerated. Inshallah, in fact, it's considered to be a source of rahmat and wus'ah for the Ummah. And accordingly, one should understand that the Shaykh also has to be someone whose Aqidah is correct, and he also follows the Sharia, and he understands the Sharia, and he encourages people to follow it. And then the third thing is also when a person finds a Shaykh, then have a look at himself, but also look at his murids and those people around him. Do they follow the Sharia? Are there people whose lives are in conformance to the Sharia? And at the same time, if he has murids, then look at his murids. What is the spiritual condition of his murids? Are the individuals who follow the Shariat? Are the individuals who have benefited from the Shaykh in that they've connected to Allah Almighty? Using that and also see what the contemporary people of the Shaykh of that time say, and using that as a yardstick, identify whether the Shaykh is correct or not, and accordingly give your hands to this person, give the bay'ah, and once you've given the bay'ah, then make sure it's not just through physical action, but from the heart, become obedient to the Shaykh and acquire and inculcate the situation of Tawheed al-Matlab. And Tawheed al-Matlab, inshallah, we'll discuss next week, inshallah. That brings me to the end. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.